David, thank you so much for being a part of this show. I'm really excited to have you here because I just know that it's going to be amazing. So we're going to jump in, David, and can you just share about your story?
Sure, yeah, and thank you so much for having me. But yes, my name is David Keck, and I live in the States. I live in Tennessee, and I am an open gay man, and I'm from the South. And there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of ignorance that comes with that, and education that's needed. I'm so blessed. I have such an amazing supportive family. Being gay was not frowned upon. I wasn't taught I was going to hell or, any of those ugly things. I am so blessed with that. I didn't know hate existed until 8 years ago. And I went to this little bar. It's a little karaoke bar that my friends and I always go to. It's kind of our cheers. And we just sing and have a good time, enjoy company, right? And I'm the type of person I don't know a stranger, and so I never cared getting on stage and singing Shania Twain, "Man, I Felt Like a Woman." The men would join me and buy beer, cheers me with it. It was never a thing. And one day there was a man that had recently been discharged from the military for drug use, and he was come to find out he was having some separation issues with his wife. And so he went out and saw me and didn't like me. And a lot of what I'm about to tell you right now, I don't remember from the brain trauma. But a lot was seen on surveillance cameras. And so I had got up from the table and went to the restroom, and this man stopped me, and it looked like a pleasant conversation. I actually gave him a business card and went to the restroom, walked right past him, heading back to the table with my friends. We finished our drink, paid our tab, and surveillance showed that we left together. And then 3 minutes later, he left by himself. And so from there's a lot of stories. No one really knows the full truth, but from there, I were thinking I was followed home, and he broke inside my house. And trigger warning, but I will spare the details, but he sexually assaulted me and beat me for estimatedly 2 hours. Standing over me, he called the mother of his children and confessed to murder, and stole my car, my credit cards, and went bar hopping. While he was at a bar, he was bragging about the F slur that he had just killed, and they kicked him out of the bar. That was it. So he gets behind the wheel of my car, drunk, and wrecks. So when the cops come to the scene, he's covered in blood, but it wasn't his. And so he confessed to murder. Now, I had just recently moved, so my ID and address that I had on my license hadn't been updated yet. So he confessed in court that his story is that I sexually propositioned him, and that's why he did what he did. Well, the good old boy cop system here in Tennessee stopped and got him some McDonald's and a pack of cigarettes, and let him eat, and told him that it's just two boys fighting out in the yard, and sometimes that's what happens, and they would have done the same thing had they been propositioned by a homosexual. This
Wow.
whole time, I'm fighting for my life. And so finally, they found my new address in my car, and I was found 18 hours later. And due to lack of oxygen, it caused, and the head injuries, it caused temporary, like, amnesia, for lack of better words, and memory loss I still haven't recovered from. I did have to learn to walk again, but I want to say that lightly as I can, because I wasn't paralyzed. I just, my there was nerve damage. And so my body just could not hold myself up. And during this time, I was having to face him in court. And he was released after 4 months for attempted murder, which that's not what he was charged with. They, of course, drop everything down, right? And he was out of jail living 3 miles from me before I was even off a walker.
Oh my God.
And he's not even registered as a sex offender. So he's living next door to your children right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's terrifying.
Terrifying. And right, I mean, listen, there's so much here. So I'm going to back it up just a bit. You're laying there for 18 hours while he's having McDonald's, and like they're buying into his story, obviously, but if nobody's looking for you. I mean, 18 hours, that's like 24 hours is a full day. Like you were,
Right.
wow. And were you conscious at the time? Or it just was like you woke up in the hospital, or?
I I don't know. There
Mm,
are memories that I have. Like, I had this memory of getting into the shower and falling into the shower, but evidence doesn't show that happened. And so I don't know if I was completely just out the whole time and my brain was just playing with me, you know? So I think it's safe to say I was just out.
yeah. My God, David. So have you have to then, like you said, learn how to walk. I mean, in the sense that your body, your mind, your brain, it's just your body's not functioning, obviously, the way
Right.
it normally should function. But during that time, do you have to go to court then? And do you, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Did you feel like you had to plead your case because he's clearly got a different story? Or did you just go in and just say, like, this is what happened? And
So there was gay right marriage that was a big deal 8 years ago. It still is. There's still all kinds of things going on with this, but then it was definitely a big deal, and they wanted everything just swept under the rug. And so I was never really talked to by the state very much. I did have an attorney that had some correspondence, but absolutely I felt like I had to do damage control. There were plenty that the story became very public. Um, the first story pretty much says gay man goes to straight bar, brings straight man home for sex, and gets beat up. That's simply not what happened. And if it did happen, I still didn't deserve that. It would have been two consensual adults, right?
yeah,
And so I felt like I had to do damage control when the truth and the facts were actually brought to light. The media released, I got a call from the newscaster, and who's actually part of the LGBT community, and she was like, David, I'm so sorry, I got a call from the judge that I have to take down every story about your case except for the very first one, which is the one blaming me.
wow.
So the death threats got so bad that police had to be around my family's home because I couldn't go to my place. I couldn't live by myself at that point. So police had to be at every entrance of my family's home because people were driving by, taking pictures, and sending me threats of wanting to finish the job.
So, I mean, there's going to be people listening that they just cannot wrap their head around it yet. It's like we know that it exists, but you can't comprehend. I can't comprehend. You're the victim. You're beaten. He thinks he's killed you, right? Because he's confessed to murder. He goes into a bar with your blood all over him, and they go, you need to go, see ya, bye, right? And the police are like, here's some McDonald's, and now you're the victim, but your story can't be shared, and you're getting the death threats, and your
Right.
family is the one who has to hide out, be protected from people. It's really hard to understand how this is a thing.
Right. Right. And your show is about loss, and I've listened to a lot of the episodes, and I was like, how do I relate to this? And I think that how I relate to the loss part is there was a part of me that did die that day.
Yeah.
That there was this new David that I had to learn to love and like, and it was the hardest thing. My family, my friends also had to. They didn't know how to talk to me anymore. They didn't know what was going to trigger me. There was this David that people knew for 34 years at that point, and he was gone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so one thing I will say to try to bring this back into something positive, right? Is I, again, where I have such an amazing support team and such an amazing family. I remember when I first came out of the closet, my father and mother told me, they said, David, you'll go to, a bar sometime, during the holidays to gather with your friends, and you'll see people sitting there by themselves, and that buffet that they have for Christmas will be their only dinner because they don't have someone to go to. If you make these friends, I don't have anywhere to go, call us. They're welcome here. We will, I don't care if it's last minute, we'll set a plate. And my family held on to that. They kept their word with that. I called and I was like, I've got 3 friends. I don't have anywhere to go. And they had a plate set. My family still knows their name, went and signed a card and put $50 in it, and so what I realized I needed to do is, I know so many people that would have laid there and died because they don't have the support that I have. And so I need, even for myself, but especially for my community, I have to take this horrific situation and turn it into something beautiful. And it's working. It's
I
working.
mean, it's so, it's like chills because it's such a powerful message. One, that yes, when we talk about loss, it's not just loss of loved ones through death. It's not just a
Sure.
divorce either. I mean, like you said, there was the before the trauma, and the before the life altering attack, hate crime, shall we say, obviously. And then the new David, like, who is that person? And you have this, so there's that loss, like you said, that grieving, that loss. But the fact that you have a family around you, I mean, there's all of these losses around, right? Because they're trying to grieve this loss. I'm sure, just the anger and all of the stuff they have to go through, right? But there's this loss and this worry and concern, especially, as a mother, like thinking about my children. And like I told you earlier, my oldest daughter is gay. Like, this is a concern that we have for our children, no matter what. But it feels heightened. And now, no doubt, your parents, they face this fear. And yet, wow, like, what a story, like, what an amazing family to go, there's a place at the table for those who don't have a place at a table, who don't have family who love them unconditionally. And in the LGBTQ community, we know that people are disowned from their family. And how amazing, what a story that your parents and your
I'm so
family.
blessed. I'm so blessed, and I don't take it for granted. Like, every time I do these interviews, as soon as I get off, I have to call my family and tell them I love them, because I'm so grateful.
Yeah, it's like, oh yes, I mean, I love you, but I just had another reminder I needed to
Mhm.
tell you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it saved me from turning to, I got very depressed. I've never been a big guy. Now is the most I've ever, weighed, and it's a healthy, 170. But I got down to 98 pounds.
Oh,
I looked like a bobblehead. I looked like a skeleton. I was so depressed. I have always been, I love color, and I would always wear bright shirts, but I got to where I only wanted to wear black, and it wasn't because I was trying to go for a different goth look. It's because I didn't want to be seen. I was
mm,
so afraid someone was going to see me and think, you know what, that other guy had one job and he failed, and I need to finish the job, and it took me a long time to like myself again. And when, forgiveness is a very important subject for me. And one thing that I learned through therapy, because I'm very active with my mental health, I go to sexual assault group therapy every Thursday. I think the best therapists need a therapist. and and so we get taught all these things, right, by society, and we have to forgive the people that's done bad to us, and that's for us. And I struggled with that, and I still do. And then I realized, I need to forgive myself. And it's not because I have blame in this, but I need to forgive myself because of that dark place I got to. I need to forgive myself for having those dark thoughts. I need to forgive myself for starting to hate myself because I started to believe what these people were telling me. And once I realized the forgiveness was to forgive me for the things that I didn't have control over, there was just this sigh of relief. And I remember that moment. And I remember when I took a breath and it felt good to feel good again. And
Yeah.
and I started to enjoy the ride on healing and recovery. And that is such a cool place to be.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful message of hope, isn't it? Is it for someone who maybe they've not gone through what you've gone through, but they're going through something so painful and they're in that very dark place, just offering them hope. Like, listen, if I can do it, you can do it too. That's such a powerful message. And so going back to this kind of healing place and going to your group, is there any other modalities, any other things that you use to get to the place where you are now?
I love Post-its. So I have a bathroom that is just mine, right? Like it's upstairs in a far corner. No one's ever going to see it. So that's my room, and it is covered in Post-its. It's covered in those affirmations because I want to brush my teeth and look at them and remind myself that it's okay to pat myself on the back. It's okay to love myself. It's okay to visit those dark places sometimes. Just don't unpack your suitcase and live there. That's when it gets dangerous. And I remember that moment when I was brushing my teeth and looking down at the sink, and I was quoting these affirmations that are all over my walls without even looking at it. And that is something that just really, really helped me. I always felt safe. Well, after my trauma, I felt safe in my bathroom. And talking with my therapist, I think it's because it was a small enough room where I could see all four corners. There was nowhere to hide. And I found, healing in music. And so my therapist and I kind of thought out a game plan, and I would go into the bathroom and I'd blast music and sing to the top of my lungs. Luckily, I was living by myself, and because nobody wants to hear me sing. And but then the next step was to open the door and come out into the connecting room, and then go to the next room, and then go to the next room, whether it took a day, a week, whatever, to do it, until one day every door was open in my house and I felt safe in my entire home.
Wow.
And that was one of the best things I think I could have done. I want to normalize these conversations because we all have it, and no one needs to compare trauma. I've had so many people say, David, I can't come onto your show and talk about my trauma because it doesn't touch yours. That's not true. My journey is mine. What I went through is the hardest thing I went through. I cannot compare it to yours. And don't compare it to mine. That's not fair to either of us.
It's such a good
Let's get through it
message, David.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good message. Right before this call, I was with a client and they were comparing their grief to
Mm,
mine and others. And I can't do that. Your grief, your trauma, your pain is the worst because it's yours. And
right.
comparing is just minimizing the pain, the grief, even minimizing the healing and the
Yep.
power that you take back, right? So such a great message. Absolutely. And I love that you also don't have a time frame by when you opened the door and went to the
Right.
next one and went to
Right.
the next one. but you did open the door. Like you
Yep.
did do that. And that's powerful. Amazing.
Yeah, it was, one thing that I find very common with victims slash survivors is we feel that we don't have control, and that's all we want is control. And setting if I set up a time frame when I failed, I would feel like I was losing control again. And so I in moderation would allow myself that time. And sometimes if that means I need to go back and close the door one day because I'm just not feeling it that day, that's okay too. And I didn't want to set myself up for failure. And I just wanted to have that control back. I now decide how I didn't choose what happened to me. I didn't choose the path I was put on, but I now get to choose how the car is driven, and I love that.
100%. And I love that. I love that for you. And I love that for everyone who has been through traumatic events and they have their PTSD and they have all the trauma or compound grief, and that you get to we do get to choose how we move through and how we move forward. We don't have to stay in the suffering, do we? So it's amazing. And just seeing your journey and hearing about your journey, not seeing it, but hearing about your journey, where are you at now? Like 8 years later, what are you doing now? I have listened to your podcast, and well, obviously in the show notes, I'll put all of the ways people can find you, but I am curious where you've ended up like, where are you now?
I my life has taken a completely different route. I was asked a question the other day, and I'll keep this short, but someone asked me if I would change anything today about my attack, and the answer was no. And that really surprised me because a year ago, 2 years ago, the answer was I would give everything for that not to have happened. And when I said no, I was like, I need to go outside and process this. I surprised myself, right? And I'm helping people. And I started a podcast during COVID because therapy was shut down. I needed my therapy. And I knew that if I was feeling this way, I was not alone. It took all I had to not pick up a bottle of vodka. It took all I had to not look for a street drug, just to numb something. And luckily, because of my support team, I was able to fight that. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to spend the $1,500. I'm going to buy the equipment. I'll record an episode or two. My mom will give it a heart on Facebook, and
I'll
I'll
have
get
my
bored.
mom.
I'll get bored with it and be done. And boy, I was wrong. Like people were coming out of the woodwork because they were needing it too. And so my podcast is called Surviving Abuse Podcast. I am on all platforms, all social medias under Surviving Abuse Podcast. Of course, you said you'll share all the links, but I always try to make a sandwich with my show, right? Like I want to start out with something positive because we spend a lot of time talking about deep, dark, ugly things, but then we always end on something positive. So I want to make that sandwich and show that there is life after trauma, and as our way of taking control. I'm on my bucket list for this year is some public speaking, which I've got some things coming up that I'm really excited about. I'm doing a lot more shows, some radio shows. So there's a lot of cool things happening, and I just. And I'm sure you can relate to this, and your listeners can relate to this. It's so hard to pat ourselves on the back, especially when we have that victim mentality. But this is one thing that I can pat myself on the back for, and I don't second guess it. And that is
100%.
such a cool feeling.
It's so good because it's that we don't come through with arrogance. We come through with this confidence and this knowing and this power of taking that control back and using that to help other people. But you did the work. Like no one did that for you. And so you absolutely should not only pat yourself on the back, but be on the stages. Like people need to hear your message of hope, healing, of, taking back control. I mean, the work that you are doing is so, so important. And I totally get what you're saying about like, no, I wouldn't change it, and
Yeah.
yet here you are. So I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to share your story. I really would love to see you on TEDx, on this. You get on these stages, and if you're ever in the UK, I'll find a stage for you to get on.
Perfect.
We could go
Perfect.
international, David, with
I
this.
love it. I love it.
Absolutely. So again, thank you so much for spending your time and just sharing your story, and more importantly, like you said, sandwiching it with just this hope.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you. Thank you
much.
so much.